Hey, what's up? It's Rachel, and today I want to talk about the fall semester, how it went, the classes I took, things I loved, things I learned, things that I probably could do better, and then we'll talk about what's coming next. We're just going to sit here, we're going to have a chat. I have my iPad with some notes. So if I'm looking down, that's why. So the first class I took this semester, I took 5 classes. And it was a total of 13 hours, I believe. And the first one was pediatrics part 1, which was from birth to 6 years. Honestly, I went into this class fully expecting to just love it. Kids have always been like my jam, and I very quickly found that I did not understand it near as much as I thought I did. This class was one of my hardest. I would say it was the hardest. And I just struggled to get it done. I ended up with a B in it, I think. And like, that's fine, it doesn't matter to me that much. But for a class that I really expected to pass with flying colors, that was not the case. One thing I really enjoyed was the practical components of it. We spent a lot of time learning developmental milestones and stuff like that. But we also learned about conditions we might see as an OT and some interventions that we could use in the future. This was interesting to me, and I found that I enjoyed a lot of the class more than I thought I would once we got past kind of some of the basic stuff, but obviously that stuff's important. This course content is something that I'm going to have to revisit over the break and make sure that I remember it, because we have Peds 2 next semester, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. And honestly, it was so hard for me to learn it. I feel like that's something I'm just gonna have to continue to refresh for my entire career. I'll show you the book we used. So this is the book we used. As you can see, it's a big old honking thing. We didn't use it as much as I expected, but that's partially because a lot of members of my class didn't have it for a bit. But I know that they used that book for the MBCOT, and so I will gladly keep it around to reference it for the future. In that class we had 3 times a week. We had 2 days of lecture and 1 day of lab for a total of 6 hours total, I think. It's definitely the class that had the most like face-to-face hours, but I would say that it had some of the least like outside of class work. We did write a couple of papers that I found very interesting and did a couple of other assignments, but for the most part, many of our deliverables were done in lab as a team, which was very helpful. The next class I had was part 1 of our capstone, and so if you don't know, as a doctoral OT student, we have to complete a capstone in our final semester. So there's 2 parts of it, the capstone project and then the capstone experience. And so we started our project, and basically what we did this semester is learn about what exactly a capstone is and then worked to develop our topic ideas. The next class is fieldwork. I was overwhelmed with how much information that there was in the lecture class. So the way this class worked is we had physical class 1 hour a week, and then we had 3 to 4 different fieldwork experiences. So as far as I can tell, I'm allowed to talk about where I went, just obviously not specifics. But if the next part of the video disappears or is muted, it's because I realized I wasn't allowed to. So I went to one of the homeless shelters here, and we did a wellness screening, and then the second time we went back and we gave a lecture based on the topics that we spoke about during our wellness screening. So my group specifically talked about how to set SMART goals and ways that we can create action steps to achieve our goals. And I think that being able to see occupational therapy in a way outside of a hospital and in more of a community-based setting was very helpful and helped me to further be motivated to continue to do well in school, because I could see that what we were doing was actually having an impact on the people we were working with, which is always nice to see, because sometimes when you're in school and you're just studying and learning books, it's easy to forget the why, and it's easy to forget why you're doing things, and that you are going to be helping people in the future. I also left out some other things that we did in fieldwork that I just remembered. So we had 2 other experiences that were virtual. The first one I did was with the Alabama Head Injury Foundation, and a group of my classmates and I created a presentation on the occupation of sleep, and were able to deliver that via Zoom to one of their support group meetings. That was really interesting and a good way to engage with individuals that had had traumatic brain injuries. And it also taught us skills on how to work as a group to create a way of education, which is also a big part of OT. The second part of fieldwork that I forgot earlier that we did were these things called simu cases, and it's an application where you log in and you basically simulate the practice session. So we had 2 simulated clients and caseloads, and one was a evaluation, so we would take it and do all of the assessments and then create a hypothesis and write goals. And then the second one was a treatment session, so we would take the OT that had written goals, we would take their goals and we would look at their intervention plan, and we would develop a treatment session for this child. And that was really nice to be able to get more hands-on work and experience without kind of having the barrier of worrying about making a mistake, because we did it in like learning mode, so you got immediate feedback and you knew, okay, this was a bad decision to make, this was a good decision to make, this was just an okay decision to make. And I think that really helped shape my clinical decision making skills, and I know that it will continue to do it as we continue to do them. The next class I did was biomechanics. I technically had like a really weird name. It was like performance skills for something, I don't know. It was biomechanics. It was also kind of difficult just because there was so much content. A lot of the content was review just because I have a kinesiology degree, and my program specifically was very like physics and exercise science based. So I have a little more background versus like some of my classmates who had psychology degrees or things like that. So I felt like I was able to grasp some of the concepts a little quicker. However, that didn't make it much easier because a lot of this class was application. So we learned how to use these things, which is a goniometer. Lots of fun. It's how you measure like range of motion. I definitely am not an expert on this by any means, but at least we learned it once. We also learned how to do manual muscle testing and pinch and grip tests and some other like practical tests that we'll see on fieldwork and then while we're working in OT. And so it was nice to have the experience and be able to learn those things and continue to develop those skills throughout our time in the program. And it was nice to be able to have that foundation set for us really early on in the curriculum. This class was another one that was a little different from other classes I had experienced in the past. We had 2 hours of lecture, I think. No, we didn't. That's a lie. So for this class, we didn't have traditional lectures. We had things called rats, which are readiness assurance tests. And so we would read a chapter in our book or a couple chapters in our book and try to like understand the concept, and then we would go in and we would take a IRAT, which is an individual readiness assurance test, and then we would get in our teams and take a team readiness test after we turned our individual ones in. And the purpose of this was to kind of help each other learn and to teach others, because you learn pretty well by teaching. It also ensured that we were reading the content and trying to learn the material by ourselves before relying on a lecture, which I think is a useful skill that will help in practice when we have to maybe learn about a condition we haven't seen or a new intervention in the future, as well as continuing like completing education courses and things like that. So that style of teaching is called team-based learning, and I'd never experienced it before, and it definitely has a learning curve. I wouldn't say like I had a negative experience or a positive experience. I kind of just had an experience. I had a very good team. However, it was such a huge learning curve for all of us that I think moving forward we will just be able to continue to grow a little better and be able to assist each other in a more like direct manner. There were times that we'd be taking the T-RAT and we would all just be like, I don't know. But that was nice. And then we had a practical exam where we basically drew out of a cup a manual muscle testing, something with the goniometer, a pinch and a grip, and then a transfer. And so those were practical skills that we will be using all the time, or we could be using all the time in our practice as an OT. And so it was nice to go ahead and get our first practical out of the way. Obviously, we'll continue to build on those skills throughout our time in the program and on fieldwork and be able to more fine-tune them, but it was nice to be able to kind of see them, try it on other people, and it gave us a good chance to practice explaining what we were doing in layman's terms as well as in the medical terms, and kind of facilitating that conversation between multiple people. Oh, and I don't know if I said, but we had rats in the morning, so we had them from like 7:30 to 9, and then we had lab for 2 hours in the afternoon where we would learn the practical things. So the last class I had was low vision, and this class was one that I went into OT school knowing absolutely nothing about. Like, if you had said, oh, OTs work in low vision, I would have been like, what is low vision? And this is something that I'm not particularly interested in at the moment, but I see this very important and it helps so many people. One of the low vision center here is the only one in the state, and our professor works there, and so he was able to tell us stories of different clients he had seen and interventions that he had been able to help with, and we learned a lot about things such as like accessibility, both physically and digitally. We learned about how diabetes and other things will affect your health. We were able to simulate some low vision and blind activities in order to kind of attempt to further understand our clients that we may have in the future, as well as learning some intervention strategies and techniques that will help enrich their lives moving forward. So this class we had kind of the same format as pediatrics, except all in one day. We had a lecture for 2 hours, and then we would have a break, and then we would have lab for, I think it was 2 hours. It might have been 2.5, I can't remember. But yeah, it was good, and we used our same groups in this class that we used in pediatrics, which helped to just further strengthen the team dynamics. As far as what's coming next semester, I'm taking evidence-based practice, which is all about, well, evidence-based practice. And it also, the course description says that we're learning a lot about literature analysis, which will be nice. We're taking another course that is a like practice skills course, and it's in neurology, so I'm not exactly sure what all that's going to contain, but I would assume it's pretty similar to the anatomy course I took first semester, where we learn a lot about just the physiology and anatomy and, well, neurology, but the anatomy and physiology of the brain and the nervous system and how all of that affects your entire being. We may learn intervention strategies based on conditions, but I'm not sure. Next class I'm taking is scholarly inquiry, which I think sets us up really well for our thesis that we will be completing our final semester during that capstone. And this class is taught by a professor I haven't had before, so I'm excited to experience another teaching style and another perspective on OT. Our last two classes are Fieldwork 2 and Capstone 2. So Fieldwork 2, it's our second level 1 fieldwork. So this is going to be in a very similar format to the first semester, where we do some online simu cases, we have lecture and learn about the different areas of fieldwork. I think we have lecture, I can't remember. And then we will have 2 to 3, maybe 4 placement. The last class I'm taking next semester is Capstone Part 2, and I'm not sure exactly what the criteria for this class is, but I would assume that we are taking our thesis and our research project, and we are beginning to do our research and finding old like papers and references. and things like that. So I'm back at my parents' house and I don't remember where I left the video off, but I just wanted to say that I hope you have a wonderful rest of your year and that your semester ended well, and I will see you next semester. Bye!